Today we'll be taking a look at random facts and trivia about the Zelda series. Some bits of trivia are more obscure than others, and if there's something you know that I didn't mention in this video, please leave a comment. Also, beware of spoilers. I usually try to keep those to a minimum, but there's one point where I spoil the ending of the particular games, so yeah, keep that in mind. And I'm going to be focusing on the mainline games unless otherwise stated. Alright, let's get started. The first and second game of the series, The Legend of Zelda and Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link, were originally released on the Famicom Disk System. While the gold NES cartridges are iconic to Western Zelda fans, the original incarnations actually look like this. The first Zelda was even a Famicom Disk System launch title. Super Mario Bros. And The Legend of Zelda were developed at the same time by the same team. They implemented their linear ideas into Super Mario Bros., while with Zelda they had the opposite approach. Zelda 1 and 2 are the most re-released games in the series. They're available for 6 different systems: the NES, GameCube, Game Boy Advance, Wii, Wii U, and 3DS. It's actually 7 if you count the Famicom Disk System. Personally, I don't because it's an accessory, and both games were available as Famicom cartridges. Floppy disks or cartridges, either way they're still for the same system. It does make sense that these are the most re-released games since they're the oldest after all. Despite never getting an official remake, Zelda 1 did get kind of a remake through the Satellaview broadcasts on the Super Famicom in Japan. Super Famicom owners with the Satellaview add-on and a satellite radio subscription could play a smaller version of the original NES game, which featured updated graphics and music, but only during specific broadcast times. Because of some really dedicated individuals, it's possible to play this game today. I talked about it and the A Link to the Past-based Satellaview games in my Zelda spin-offs video. Check that out, or just Google Satellaview Zelda or BS Zelda and you'll find info on it. Zelda 1 was the first cartridge-based home console game that allowed progress to be saved. A 12-volt battery keeps the data alive, even when the console is powered off. The manual states that the battery lasts about 5 years. Every time save batteries come up, I always mention the same thing: battery holders. The now iconic Zelda theme song was composed in one day. Koji Kondo, the series composer, wanted to use Bolero as the game's theme song, but couldn't due to the fact that it wasn't out of copyright yet, so he had to quickly come up with something different. In hindsight, this was a good thing, of course, and I'm sure the original music helped establish the series as its own thing. Sometimes greatness is achieved through necessity. The Poles Voices description in the Zelda 1 manual stating that they don't like loud noises is something left over from the original Famicom game. Players had to make use of the Famicom's microphone built into the second controller in order to kill them. NES versions of the game made arrows the weakness for Poles Voices, but never changed the description before having it translated. Interestingly enough, the Japanese 3DS and Wii U Virtual Console re-releases make use of the system's microphones. Systems that don't have microphones like the GBA or Wii have different ways of killing Poles Voices. Zelda 2 is the only game to not feature any bombs. Sounds a bit strange, since bombs are one of the most prevalent items in the series, but Zelda 2 doesn't have any. Zelda 2 is also the first game to feature Dark Link, who is an evil doppelganger that shows up in a few games from time to time. Since its introduction in A Link to the Past, the Fairy Fountain theme has been used in the menu in every game except Link's Awakening, Triforce Heroes, and Breath of the Wild. Another Zelda tradition is that Link wakes up in the beginning of a lot of the games. Usually he's just sleeping, sometimes he's unconscious. A Link to the Past was the first occurrence, and since then the only times this didn't happen was in Oracles of Ages and Triforce Heroes. It's funny that in Oracles of Seasons, Link wakes up twice, first when he's unconscious after being transported through the wormhole or whatever that is, and then when he gets hit by the tornado. Also, depending on how you interpret Link's Awakening for the Game Boy, you could argue Link actually wakes up at the end of that game. See, I warned you about spoilers. And if you skipped through that part, well, that's your own fault for not listening through the whole thing. The Oracle games for the Game Boy Color were supposed to be a trilogy, with each game representing a piece of the Triforce. But due to time constraints and the fact that they didn't want to release the games after the release of the GBA, 3 became 2. This one's kind of famous. The original version of the Fire Temple theme in Ocarina of Time included some Islamic chanting. It went against Nintendo's policy of not referencing any real-life religions, so it was removed in later production runs. The nice thing as a Zelda fan is that no matter which Nintendo system you have, there's always a Zelda game for it. Well, actually, that's not quite right. The Color TV game range of systems existed before Zelda, so it never got a game, obviously. And the Virtual Boy never got one either, but I'm not sure what the reason is on that. Popularity, or the lack of it, is my theory. During the GameCube era, it was possible to play every mainline Zelda game on the GameCube, all the way from the first NES game to Twilight Princess. In order to do that, you need the Game Boy Player for Link's Awakening and A Link to the Past and Four Swords. The Collector's Edition includes the NES and N64 games, and the rest were all GameCube games. Then Phantom Hourglass happened in 2007, and no Nintendo system was ever able to play every Zelda game since. Nico, the lowest ranking member of Tetra's pirate crew in Wind Waker, is one of the very few characters to have seen more than one incarnation of Link. Of course, he knows the Hero of Winds from Wind Waker and Phantom Hourglass, but he also met the Link in Spirit Tracks, where Nico mentions how similar he looks to an old friend of his. I'm actually curious to see if there are any other characters who've met more than one Link. In Four Swords and Four Swords Adventures, Link splits into 4 different parts, each with their own color: green, red, blue, and purple. In Triforce Heroes, it's 3, and purple is missing. Some people are speculating where the purple Link has gone off to, but that actually doesn't make any sense if you think about it. It's just that Link is split into 3 rather than 4. Now we'll talk about Breath of the Wild for a bit. It's the most recent game, so a lot of this stuff is fresh in my memory right now. Currently, it's the only mainline Zelda game to not feature the iconic green tunic as Link's standard outfit, though it's still possible to obtain. It's the only game that hasn't been placed into the official timeline yet. Where it sits is anyone's guess at the moment. I think everyone knows this, but yeah, that's a fact, I guess. You can have more than one Epona, as strange as that sounds. Scanning a Super Smash Bros. Link and Twilight Princess Link amiibo will work, as does 2 different Smash Bros. Or Twilight Princess Links. Theoretically, you can spawn in more Eponas the more amiibo you have. Makes me wonder if Nintendo left this uncapped. Would it be possible to crash the game with hundreds of Eponas? It's possible to change the temperature gauge to display Celsius instead of Fahrenheit. This is a Canada Pro tip here, so this is why I'm including this. On the Switch, both language and region determine what units the temp gauge displays. Changing the region to Europe will fix this for us Canadians. The time also changes to 24-hour time, and the date is formatted to day, month, year, which I'm fine with. Interestingly enough, you can have the region set to the Americas and set the language to Spanish or Portuguese to get Celsius as well. Honestly, they should have just given us a choice instead of just assuming that every English-speaking person in the Americas uses Fahrenheit. And then Nintendo decides to use meters for every region, so what's the point of even implementing this region/language-specific setting? But yeah, that's going to be it for this video. These are just some things I remember at the moment. I mean, it's called Random Facts and Trivia for a reason. Hopefully I managed to avoid some really obvious ones. I mean, I didn't include things like, oh, Miyamoto created. Yeah, you can look at Wikipedia for that stuff. Also, let me know if there are any facts and bits of trivia you know in the comments. Remember to like the video if you did, subscribe to the channel if you want to catch more videos in the future, and click the bell if you want to be annoyed by notifications. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video.